Hey everybody, it's Pastor Jared here at Ridge United Methodist Church, and I want to welcome you to this week's Teaching Tuesday, where every Tuesday during lunch hour, I upload these short 10 to 15 minute videos that will hopefully give you something to chew on or think about as you go about the rest of your day, even throughout the rest of your week. I try to teach you something about the Christian faith or even give you a little devotional type of thing to reflect upon as you continue throughout your day. So today I want to talk about something very fun to me. It's called Aristotelian virtue ethics. Aristotelian virtue ethics. It sounds way fancier and way smarter than it really is, but I've been thinking about these lately in particular because I used to talk about virtues with my friend John. Now, you who are friends with me on Facebook will have learned that last week my friend and my mentor John passed away after a long and pain-filled battle with cancer. I loved John, and I'm so sad that he is no longer with us, selfishly because I learned so much from him, but also for the sake of the world. John worked for the Lilly Endowment in Indianapolis, and through his work gifted literally billions of dollars of monies and grants to help further the mission of the church and to also benefit and bless the world. I love John and the ways that he leveraged his life for the good of others. He embodied for me a lot of the ways Jesus says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. John did that with his immense mind and his many strengths. He loved God and he loved others. John and I used to meet regularly for this over the course of 4 years, and from time to time we would talk about this little card that he had taped to the back of his desk. It had some of these words that are behind me before you about vices and virtues and vices. Aristotle used to talk a lot about the ways that virtues fall somewhere in the middle. Vices occur with either having too much or too little. I've just written down a couple here to highlight for you. A virtue is to be a generous person, someone who gives of your time, your talents, your finances, your possessions, that you're not holding back, being stingy. Or you're not just like over the top extravagant to the point where you're irresponsible and it harms you and it harms your loved ones. Like there's a fine line between not giving anything away and giving everything away. The virtue that Aristotle taught we should aspire to is somewhere in between. Same thing with bravery or courage. Like that's the virtue. We want to be brave. We want to be courageous in the face of fear or challenges or whatever it is. The virtue is being brave. The vice, if you don't have enough or if you're lacking, if you're deficient in it, is to be cowardly. I always think of the cowardly lion in The Wizard of Oz. He has the big roar, but he's just like a little terrified kitten on the inside. On the other hand, if you are in excess or you have too much, like you're just rash, like you're irresponsibly bold in the ways you just jump forward and go for it without even thinking, without even, not only if you can do it, but thinking about the others that might be affected. I mean, you're just like kind of inherently selfish. You're not courageous. You're not bold. You're what the Bible calls a fool. Like, that's too much or an excess of it. Then the third one I wrote down is like being temperate, someone who, I like the way that the scripture talks about someone who is peaceful. There's an axiom, or rather, I don't know if it's an axiom, but a word that is used in ministry, used in other fields of being a non-anxious presence. That's what I think of being temperate. Like some people are on the deficient side, ascetic, like they've given everything up, or just kind of maybe nihilism, like where they just like, I'm like nothing matters, I'm done. Like there's one end, and then the other end, like you're addictive, like you're just is this over the top. That take forms of drugs and alcohol, pornography. There's lots of those kinds of addictions, but temperance is somewhere in the middle of not doing completely away with it but not going all in on it either. I had a friend who talks about this old joke of whether or not Methodists can drink alcohol, to which the pastor replied, well, the answer is the same as if Methodists can dance. Some can and some can't. There's this kind of this line of what's too much, what's too little, what's right for me, what's in the middle here. Anyways, that's a very brief flyover view, but one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up today is because I've been thinking about this in connection with our United Methodist tradition. I became interested in Aristotelian virtue ethics because John Wesley was. In fact, the Anglican Church, the church from which Methodist was born, and the Anglican Church grew out of the Roman Catholic Church. So I have a really cool thing. It's actually in my office, or no, I have it in a safety box locked at home. It's this gift certificate, or this, it's not a gift certificate, but it's a certificate that traces my ordination all the way back theoretically to John Wesley, and then all the way back to St. Peter. Bishop Trimble laid his hands on me, and the bishop that laid his or her hands on Bishop Trimble, and it goes all the way back. It's a cool connection. But our Methodist roots go back to this. Then they advocate for this via media. This via media. It's Latin for the middle way. The Anglican Church used to describe itself as a sort of via media between what they described as two extremes. On the one hand, Roman Catholicism, and on the other, Puritanism, like two opposite ends of a spectrum, at least according to them during their time. And they said, well, we are somewhere in the middle. We can see advantages and disadvantages to both extremes, and there are things that we agree and others that we disagree upon. We think that the truth is somewhere in the middle. I love the way John Wesley used to draw and pull from different traditions of the Christian faith. It wasn't just one narrow stream, but rather John Wesley saw the ways in which God would be highlighted in unique and particular ways through the Eastern Orthodox Church, or the Roman Catholic Church, or the Moravians. I mean, John Wesley looked for truth outside of just the stream into which he was born. He looked for a middle way that sought to glean and listen from different ones. Now, all of this was held under the umbrella, or within the tension, of the deeper truth for John Wesley and for we who are Christians, who follow Jesus, because it's Jesus himself who says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Aristotle was looking for a way to live. Aristotle was looking for a truth. Aristotle, really at the heart of his conversations about what are virtues and vices, was looking for life. Maybe even what Jesus would call life abundant. Now, John Wesley, reflecting upon Jesus' words in John chapter 14, when he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, John Wesley has this wonderful reflection. He says, to questions concerning which way, Jesus answered, I am the way. To questions concerning knowledge, Jesus answered, I am the truth. Jesus was a Jew, born out of and from within rich tradition, the Hebrew scriptures, what we call the Old Testament. And one of the key books in the Old Testament is the book of Proverbs. It's one of several books that we call the wisdom literature. And throughout the Proverbs, there are tasty bites of wisdom, of ways to live within virtues, to avoid vices, of having too much or too little. And I got to pause there real quick, because I've been thinking about this also with our possessions. Like when we're cleaning the house, I lament, oh, we have too many Legos when I step on these toys that are never put away. Sometimes it's a good spiritual discipline to clean out our houses, to literally clean out our closets. Maybe we have too much, and maybe we can give it to someone who has too little, or maybe we just need to thank God and recycle it or throw it away, to cleanse ourselves, to reorient ourselves more in the middle. Well, anyways, the Proverbs talk about that kind of wisdom in different ways. In Proverbs 4:11, the wisdom teacher says, "I will instruct you in the ways of wisdom and lead you along straight paths." The word wisdom here kind of connotes this meaning of treading or trampling, and it calls to mind a path that's been worn down or compacted by use. If you've ever walked through a field with tall grass, you'll know after a few steps it starts trampling its way down, and over a course of time there's a pathway. My dog used to do this. He had worn a path or trampled one down in certain areas around our house where the grass was just trampled down. He had ways of only going on this path over and over and over again. That's kind of the same idea that the Proverbs use about wisdom. Like if you walk along the way long enough, it'll start not only teaching you where to go, but will also start reforming who you are on the inside. There's always this balance of belief and action, of action and belief. It's never one or the other. For us in our Methodist tradition, it's both. It's about our personal holiness as well as our social holiness. It's about what happens on the inside and the ways that gives birth to how we live in the world. Or thinking about the way of wisdom, it can also be about the ways that we do things can shape or reform who we are on the inside. It's a both, it's an and, it's a middle way. I want to bring this before you today because, in part, I want to set up something we're going to be talking about next week. Several months ago, when I got to tour the immigration conversations and the complexities therein with the Wabash Pastoral Leadership Program, I met a Mennonite pastor who posed some very provocative questions. But underneath it all was one question. He asked us, are we asking American questions or are we asking Christian questions? I'm looking forward to having that conversation with you more next week. But one of the things he was saying is that it's not just an either or, that there can be a third option, that there can be another way. When Jesus talks about being the way, the truth, and the life, he's inviting us to walk a new path, to follow him, to tread it down so that others can more clearly see our lives and follow Jesus with us. The question that I have for you today is, how are you seeking wisdom? In what ways might your life need to change and would benefit from walking not just a via media, a middle way, but walking more in tune with Jesus's? From where and how are you gleaning your wisdom? Well, as people of seeking to follow Jesus and people of the scriptures, I want to just encourage you or give you a challenge. One way you might glean some wisdom as you go through the rest of your day and this week, with a simple little exercise. Last week it was 1 minute of silence. This week I want to encourage you to read 2 Proverbs and 1 Psalm. Just 2 Proverbs. I'm not talking about a whole chapter. Just literally 2 Proverbs. They're each about 1 stanza or 2 lines. So if you read 2 Proverbs or 4 lines and 1 Psalm a day, they are within the wisdom literature. And I have this feeling that between now and next Tuesday, God will be leading you down a different path, the way of wisdom, the way of Jesus. May we walk along the path that's already been trodden down for us. May we hear Jesus' invitation to come and follow him. Dear ones, that's our devotional for this week. That's our Teaching Tuesday, just under 15 minutes. God bless, and I'll see you next week. Until then, subscribe to our YouTube channel, click like on our Facebook page, follow along, because we are all on this journey together to navigate these times in ways that not just get us through them, but help us to become more like Jesus and thrive for the world while we're in them. In his name we pray, and in his name may you go forth. God bless you and keep you. Until next Tuesday, I'm Pastor Jared.